Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Good morning. I'm Jeff Kellam, the Parish Associate at the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott, welcoming you to this week's edition of Encounter and wishing you a Happy New Year, first program of the new year. A note from my wife says I should mention this, that Union Presbyterian Church is beginning its bicentennial year today, and through the next 52 weeks, we'll be celebrating the 200th birthday of that congregation in Endicott. It really goes back further than that. It started as a little Dutch Reformed church in 1789. So we're celebrating our 200th birthday after 230 years. So now I've done that, and I can go home, and if Joan says, "Did you mention it?" I can say yes, because she's the chairman of the committee, the chairperson of the committee. Okay, that out of the way. Speaking of Happy New Year's, we have a person who's beginning a new ministry in our area, in Owego, and I'll introduce the Reverend Bruce Gillette, who is the pastor at the First Presbyterian Union Church in Owego, not to be confused with the Union Presbyterian Church in Endicott, or the First Presbyterian Church in wherever USA. You started December 1st, and your wife, Carolyn Winfrey Gillette, is the parish associate at the church. Her position and mine are a little bit different in that she has pastoral responsibilities that are outlined in her contract, I guess. Right. And I'm serving as a volunteer, as an old retired guy that needed a title. So here we are. Tell me, first of all, you have a tie on that has camels on it.
This coming Sunday, January 6th, is the international celebration in the church year for Epiphany.
Right.
And the biblical story that goes with that is in the second chapter of the Gospel of Matthew, the story of the wise men coming to bring gifts to the Christ child.
And also, this Sunday is a celebration of baptism of the Lord.
Sunday.
Well,
depending on which
depending on the lectionary, right. So we're combining it all into one big 12th night thing.
Okay.
But yeah, so Epiphany, and the word Epiphany is like an enlightenment or a
manifestation, revelation.
Yeah.
It's a celebration that this child is like no other child.
Yeah.
I had 3 children born. We never had 3 wise men show up with gifts.
Right.
Didn't have a star celebrating it.
Yeah.
No political leader was threatened by his birth or her birth.
Right.
So this child is truly unique. And this day celebrates the gift of Jesus, not just for the people of God of the first century, the Jews, but for all of the world. And he is recognized not just in the family and the tradition that he grew up in, but beyond that. And that's why we celebrate this story of the foreign visitors coming to pay him homage.
Now, is Epiphany a season?
It's a day, and then you have Sundays after
Epiphany.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
but those readings for churches that use a lectionary, assigned readings, which would be Catholic and many Protestants like Lutheran, Episcopalian, Presbyterian, some Baptists, Congregationalists. Those that use the lectionary will have readings for the Sundays that follow that celebrate Jesus being this unique person like none other, with special stories that lifts up his uniqueness.
Yeah. So this Epiphany, which is the rooted in the bringing of the gifts and the recognition by these stargazers of the specialness of this child, carries over into, we've used the word epiphany now as I had an idea, or I had an epiphany. Mm-hmm. What epiphany brought you here?
Well,
not to the set.
Right. Kellam and I have been pastors for 30 years. We've served in separate churches, and we've served together as co-pastors. And we decided that we were looking for a new call, and we have vacationed in New York State for over 25 years in the Finger Lakes region. We often have rented a little cottage at Loon Lake, which is close to Wayland, Cohocton, and we have many good memories of this region. And so when we were looking, there were a number of churches that were looking at us as well, but we really just kind of came back to the church in Owego, and it is a unique congregation, as you know. Yeah. They have a wonderful history. They just celebrated their 200th anniversary last year, but they have just an incredible number of gifted people and very committed to serving in the community, a deep spirituality. So we really felt this was where God wanted us to use our gifts.
So you started on December 1st, and your position as pastor, we have this thing that I've heard in the past, that a pastor shouldn't make any changes in the first year. Is that still a kind of common tradition, or?
I think anybody starting a job, whether it's a pastor or in other positions, does well to listen. Somebody said God gives us 2 ears and 1 mouth, and to use them proportionately. Yeah. Sometimes a challenge for us preachers, right. But I am trying hard to definitely listen and to get the lay of the land. At the same time, the congregation has been very open to suggestions and ideas. For example, we had the governing body, the session meet last night, and I proposed something they have not done before. This month we have the 90th anniversary of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And so on that holiday, when the schools are out, we're going to have a special intergenerational program and invite the community to it. We'll start off by making Church World Service kits to do some service. Mm-hmm. The kits will be school kits for children that need some basic school supplies, and also hygiene kits to help people in times of disaster. And that'll be given to the Ecumenical Relief Agency, Church World Service.
And this is a global ministry.
This is a global ministry.
Overseas.
Yeah, they go wherever there's a disaster. The school kits tend to be used more in the United States, but can be used overseas as well. But after we spend the morning putting those together, and children as young as 3 can help with that. We'll do that. We'll have a simple lunch, hot dogs, pizza kind of thing. And then in the afternoon, we're going to show 2 movies. For the adults, we're going to show the Academy Award-winning movie Selma. Powerful story of Dr. King's March. And at the same time, we'll show the Disney movie Ruby Bridges. The story, again, a true story of a young African-American girl who helped integrate the schools in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And very powerful, but more at a child level. So yeah. we hope a lot of people in the community will be part of that. We hope other churches throughout the county and the country celebrate Dr. King's life.
Yeah. Just a quick aside, mm-hmm. Almost a sidebar. Showing movies in a church, the church has a license mm-hmm. to do this, right?
Right.
Because a lot of churches just assume that if you can pick it up at the store.
You know, the boss says, "Thou shalt not steal."
Yeah, yeah.
And so there is, fortunately, a national organization that does it very easily. For a church our size, it costs about $250,
yeah.
but that's showing, we can show many movies in a year's time for that amount.
Yes.
And I find if you pass the hat, you can easily cover that.
Yeah, yeah. So. I just see ads every once in a while from nonprofits showing movies, and I think, I wonder if they really know that the way to do this legally is to get that license.
Continue to support good creativity yeah. and good movies, yeah, so yeah. I have no problem doing that.
So now, away from the sidebar and back to Dr. King, the idea of a day of service mm-hmm. Is tied in with his ministry and his legacy. And tell me a little bit more about have you seen this done in other areas?
We've done it in several other churches and communities, and it has built over time that more people have gotten involved in it. I have been a student of his writings and remember him from my childhood. And one of my favorite quotes from Dr. King is, "What's the most important question that can be asked?" And that his answer was, "What are you doing for others?" And after his death, his wife encouraged a day in his memory to be a day of service. So it shouldn't just be a time of worship. It shouldn't just be a time of speeches, but it should be a time of truly trying to help others.
Right. And so tell me again the date that your church will be doing this.
This will be the national holiday. This year it falls on January the 21st.
Okay.
That third Monday in January.
Yeah. Well, that we should follow up on that and find out how it went, and
Sure.
and then see how it progresses in future years as well.
Be happy to talk to you again.
So as you begin your ministry here, let's talk a little bit about where you've been. What has led you to Owego, and not just the geography and so on, but where
my life in 30 seconds or less.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And
I was born at a young age.
Checking my watch here to see how long it's.
I grew up in a family that was very active in the church for generations. Actually, one of my ancestors, William Gillette, came over here in 1630, and he was a Huguenot minister fleeing religious persecution. All of my grandparents were very active in their churches. I have the original edition of William Barclay's Daily Study Bibles from my grandmother with her penciled notes in the pages. She was a clerk of session, a Presbyterian treasurer. Both my grandfathers were involved in politics and lived out their faith. One was a mayor, the other was a county commissioner. Deep committed Presbyterians as well.
Yeah. And where was this?
They were all in Kansas.
Okay. Oh my.
Yeah. My father went to seminary, went to graduate school, studied church history, ended up becoming a church historian in Philadelphia. My mother was a school librarian. I thought I was pre-law when I was in college. I went to a church conference center in New Mexico called Ghost Ranch.
I've been there, yeah.
I will tell you, I went there just to go to New Mexico, not because I had any call to the ministry. I like the idea of the beautiful Georgia O'Keeffe Mountains and mesas. Well, that summer was transforming, and I really did feel a call to the ministry at the end of it. I finished college, did a couple of internships, went to Princeton, and the best thing that happened at Princeton was I met my wife. After we finished our studies, we went someplace where we could both find work, and in this case it was Sussex County, New Jersey, all the way at the top of the state where New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania come together. It was a small town, somewhat like Owego, and we loved it there. It's not uncommon in your first church to be there only 3-5 years. I was there 9 years. It was a wonderful congregation, and we also got more involved in the community. We started a prison ministry at the state prison, built a chapel there with the Roman Catholic Church. We started Habitat for Humanity and did a lot of ministries. But after 3 children were born there, we decided we wanted to work in a church together where we could have the kids all go to one church and we be together. And we served for 10 years in South Jersey and Pittman. Pittman's best known for being a Methodist camp meeting site. It's where In the Garden was first sung.
Is that right?
And that's also where Carolyn started writing hymns. And she's quite a gifted hymn writer, and has written over 400 now. They're in over 20 books, thousands of websites, and she's gotten a lot of recognition for her good work. After 10 years in Pittman, we were 12 years in Delaware, in the suburbs of Delaware, did some good work there. We did a brief stay in Philadelphia that didn't work out. The church felt we brought too much change. We had 20-some people join, 11 baptisms, but it just wasn't a good match, and we decided to look, and we're very happy to be in Owego.
When you come into a church, the size of the Owego, how large is the church?
185 on the rolls. We get 80 or 90 on Sunday morning. Nice size.
Yep. So that transition from the larger churches to a small church, there are names for some program churches, and what? Tell me what this church is, what the size would be.
I think it would be called a small church, or it's a pastored-centered church would be another category that Hopewell uses in his Sizing Up Congregations book. It obviously can't do as many things as a medium-sized church, but there is a stronger sense of community often in a church this size. The Owego church sort of breaks the mold in some ways in that it has many small groups, and so it may not have as large of a quantity, but the quality of the church is extraordinary. very caring, very faithful, very loving people.
I went from a church of maybe 600 as the associate pastor to a church of about 69 in
Wow.
Vermont.
Okay.
And I could tell that story. It changed our lives. I mean, just the simplicity of life, but in a very challenging place.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of the pastors, I met one of the former pastors of that small church in Vermont, and he said, you know, you think of this as a small church, but he said, every large church, this is the kind of church it wants to be. And that's why it has small groups, so that people do have a sense of community and family. He said, if you have a church of 2,000, well, good for you, but those folks don't know each other the way people do in a smaller community.
Well, in a couple of churches I've served, we've had 2 worship services, and it really creates 2 congregations.
Yeah.
They don't
Right.
know each other.
Right.
You know? So if you can do it smaller and better, I think that's a...
But you only get to preach that sermon once. It better be
That's
right
true,
the
that's
first
true.
time.
You can't revise it a second time round.
That's right, that's right. I'm interested too in some of your ecumenical background. You know, here we sit 2 Presbyterians on a program that's often hosted by Methodists, and we have our guests who come in from the Orthodox and the Roman Catholic communities. And we have some guests who are not part of any particular religious group. But your background has taken you globally into some ecumenical circles.
I've always been drawn to Jesus' prayer in John 17, where he prays that his followers might be one. I'm very happy to be a Presbyterian, but I also can be enriched, nurtured, and can learn a great deal from people of other traditions, both within the Christian church and beyond it as well. When I was in seminary, I worked 2 summers for the World Council of Churches. One summer in Switzerland at their international headquarters.
That's not too bad a gig.
No, that was quite nice, and then I got a Euro pass and bounced around Europe afterwards. But then I also did, the following summer, they had their 6th assembly in British Columbia, and it's amazing to people literally from all over the world gathering to worship, to talk, to learn together, and to seek ways to serve together. In local communities, I have been very involved in working with colleagues, other local churches. I've also been involved at the national level. You may remember there was once something called the Consultational Church Union, which was an attempt from the 60s to bring the mainline churches closer together. I was on the executive committee for that when it evolved into what it is today, which is called Churches Uniting in Christ, which has brought more unity than there has been, but not obviously a full unity. I wrote an overture to our Presbyterian General Assembly when I was in South Jersey, where we had a number of families that one was Presbyterian, the other was Roman Catholic, asking for a pastoral resource that would help couples that were coming out of that. You know, what do you do when you have a child, and where is that child baptized? How do you participate in the worship life of each church? And our General Assembly approved it. The Roman Catholic Conference of the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops also agreed to do it, and a little book came out of that called Interchurch Families. I asked for it, I didn't write it. We had a Catholic bishop and another Presbyterian minister co-author that. It was jointly published by Presbyterians and Catholics. Most recently, I was part of the Presbyterian delegation to what's called the World Communion of Reformed Churches. A couple of years ago, we had the 500th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation, and our international meeting was in Germany. And it was truly a joy to be in Luther's church in Wittenberg with Christians around the world. And there in that church, our group signed a document with the representative from the Pope and a representative from the Lutheran World Federation and the World Methodist Council coming to a common understanding of justification. The joint doctrine, the joint declaration on the doctrine of justification, JDDJ, something that has divided the church for centuries. Now there is a common understanding. We still have different emphasis sometimes in our traditions, but we can now say we are more united than we have been in the past.
Common ground in a very basic theological stance.
I think today, you know, we are in an increasingly more secular society, and we need to have a more common shared witness, not only with fellow Christians, but also people of other faith traditions, to lift up shared values of compassion and care for one another in a time where there's deep divisiveness and sometimes indifference to the needs of others. Right. I'm very grateful for your Council of Churches to do this creative media ministry, but also their program in the county to help those in need is truly a model for others.
It's I've been a part of this Broome County Council of Churches over the past maybe 4 or 5 years, and on this program for maybe 3. And I've been in some larger metropolitan areas and smaller areas, but I've never seen a council as strong, with as many ministries and a terrific foundation. And there's some big news coming on the horizon too. I can kind of say, stay tuned for that. Our guest today is the pastor of the First Presbyterian Union Church in Owego, New York, the Reverend Bruce Gillette. Now, you and your wife are, would you call this a team ministry or
Well, it's a little different this time around. We have been co-pastors in previous churches. This is a smaller church, so they can't afford to have Carolyn do more than just a little bit. She is doing some supply preaching. Last month she taught a workshop for Lutherans in Pennsylvania. She's teaching one for Methodist in Delaware. This month she hits the road a bit doing workshops on her hymn writing as well as preaching. But at the church, we've only been there a month. She's preached once. She was visiting somebody in the hospital yesterday. This morning she's at a small group Bible study. She's doing a variety of things as time permits.
And I don't want to talk about her ministry of hymn writing because we should have her on sometime. But
hope she'll be able to manage that,
right?
Yes.
But what impresses me about the hymn writing is that if something happens in the news that draws the national focus in a justice issue, for example, a couple of days later, she has a beautifully crafted hymn sung to a familiar tune. So that it doesn't take a lot to sing it. If you know, I'll just choose "Mighty Fortress is Our God," but she's written words that tie in beautifully with something that's going on. When you talk about contemporary church music, these are well-known hymn tunes to many churches, and the main line is mainstream traditions, but with words that just sharply focus our theology on something that's going on today. And it's a very impressive thing. Plus, speaking of copyrights, in fact, we're using one this weekend at our church to close this bicentennial kickoff service. And it's about a new year and a new beginning. And all you have to do to use that hymn is to put the copyright at the bottom and give the appropriate credit. And
your pastor, Pat, owns Carolyn's books that give permission for any of the hymns in those books to be used. And the hymns that she's written about issues such as, she's written several on the immigration crisis we have, and she gives permission for free use of those. There are other hymns that she's written that she hopes people will honor copyright, maybe give a donation for. But for small churches, she has been a pastor of small churches. She's very willing to let people use them for free if they can't afford to make any donation. She's gracious.
But let's, as we talk.
I'll just mention, if folks want to pursue a little more, if they go to carolynshymns.com, they can find 400 hymns, indexes to scripture, topics, and every lectionary, you name it, it's all there.
But we made a reference earlier to the license for showing films in churches, that the artist should be paid just as much as, you don't expect the plumber to come in and fix the church plumbing, or the roofers to come in and do it all for free because you're a church or you're a nonprofit. Artists also have to make a living, and so it's appropriate to pay for the poetry,
I won't disagree.
pay for the music.
Carolyn also would welcome donations. At the same time, I'll give you an example. The very first church she served out of seminary was so small they didn't have indoor plumbing. They had keys for the firehouse across the street. And a church like that may not have any music budget. And so she would much prefer to let them use a hymn, than for them not to be able to have something that's more contemporary, addressing what's going on in the world.
Right.
So she's generous, and we've managed to live fine.
But there are other churches that can afford to buy the firehouse across the street, and they should pay for the hymn.
Right.
That's right. So we have just about 2 minutes left.
Okay.
Let's talk once again about the day of service that will be held on the Monday official Martin Luther King birthday holiday.
90th anniversary.
The 90th anniversary of his birth, and that again the date is
January 21st.
All right, so that's the 21st. And so it's not just church members, anyone can join in.
Very much for the public. We'll start at 11 o'clock with doing the service kits for disaster relief and also to help children who are in poor educational settings. We'll make those kits in the morning, have a simple lunch after that, and then have a free movie, Selma and Ruby Bridges, for adults and children in the afternoon.
Right. And the church is located in downtown Owego, beautiful downtown Owego.
We're on the corner of a couple of significant streets, North Street and also Temple Street, right there on the corner.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
So our guest has been the Reverend Bruce Gillette, who has begun his ministry as pastor at the First Presbyterian Union Church in Owego. And your wife, Carolyn, is serving as the parish associate at that church as well. So I'd be interested, again, in following up. Perhaps we can get some pictures or some video of that day of service. I think that'll be something to look back on. And,
All right.
And I'll mention again that today is the beginning of the bicentennial year for another church with the word Union in it, and this one's located in the Union District of Endicott at 200 East Main Street. The bicentennial year of the Union Presbyterian Church begins today, or this weekend. Thank you for joining us on this first Encounter program of the new year. I appreciate your being with us, and the Broome County Council of Churches providing the host for the program. Thanks to WBNG Television for the studio space, and Town Square Media for carrying us on the radio. I'm Jeff Kellam, hoping that in the coming week you will be gentle with people and, of course, with yourself. And again, Happy New Year.